If you felt like Montana property taxes were getting out of control, well, you weren't imagining it. In 2023, homeowners saw an average 21% jump in property tax bills, and that forced a lot of families to pay thousands more than they were used to paying. But here's the headline: the reforms passed in the 2025 legislature appear to be cutting taxes for a lot of Montana homeowners right now. In fact, preliminary numbers show 8 out of 10 residences saw a decrease of more than 5% from 2024 to 2025. So that's great news, right? Well, yeah, for some people, but there are trade offs. There are winners and losers, and the system changes again in 2026. And that's where things get really important for homeowners, long term rentals, second homes, and short term rentals. And today we're breaking it down. What happened in 2025? What changes again in 2026? And the pros and cons, plus what to watch so you don't get surprised. This video is sponsored by Cyphers Family Real Estate, helping buyers and sellers and investors make decisions with the full financial picture in mind. Here we are, the Montana Real Estate Channel. I'm Craig Cyphers. All the information in order to get a hold of us is in the description below, and we'd love to be a resource for you if you're looking to be involved in the real estate market in Montana. So our quick disclaimer right here is that I'm not a tax pro or attorney. This is educational, and the rules can change, and individual situations vary by property type, location, and classification. Always verify with the Montana Department of Revenue and your tax advisor. So, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about Montana's property tax situation. It became a political and economic pressure cooker for a couple of simple reasons. First of all, home values surged, and property taxes often follow value, whether or not your income actually goes up as well. By 2023, homeowners saw that eye-popping 21% average increase in property tax bills. And over several years, residents started shouldering more of the statewide property tax burden. And that's why the state formed working groups, held major negotiations, and during the 2025 legislative session, they passed what a lot of people have called sea-changing property tax reform. So let's talk about what's happening right now under these reforms. According to preliminary Department of Revenue data, 8 out of 10 residences saw a decrease of more than 5% in their property tax bill from 2024 to 2025. Under the old system, only about 1 in 10 would have actually seen any kind of reduction. And the average savings for homeowners who got a cut was more than $500, or more than $900 for people who claimed the $400 rebate. Now that's a big deal, but it also means something else. If most people pay less, someone else pays more. Montana's property tax system is structured so the burden shifts. The early breakdown looks something like this. The primary baseline is the median home price according to the Montana Department of Revenue. That's $378,000. So up to 1 times the median price is 0.76%. Then from 1 times to 2 times median, it's 0.9%. Then 2 to 4 times, it's 1.10%. And above the 4 times the median, it is 1.9% for primary and long-term rentals. Roughly 10% saw little to no change. Roughly 10% saw higher taxes. So the reforms are doing what they were designed to do, which is deliver relief to most primary homeowners, and it shifts more of the burden onto other categories, especially as we head into 2026. Here's the simplest way to understand the politics of this. If the state structure results in lower taxes for many primary homeowners, the difference is picked up elsewhere, and that include one, higher value homes, commercial, industrial properties in some cases, second homes, short term rentals, and sometimes by accident, categories like multifamily. And we'll get into that. This is where the pros and cons become real. The system can help a lot of people while creating hardship for others who don't feel wealthy but happen to live in a high value home due to location or long term ownership. One of the toughest parts of this conversation is that high value home doesn't always mean high income household. For example, an older homeowner on a fixed income may have bought decades ago, watched the neighborhood explode in value, and now faces taxes tied to that value without ever selling or cashing out. That's often called the unrealized gain. Now, your home is worth more on paper, but you haven't actually pocketed the money. And some homeowners have reported big jumps from 2024 to 2025. Like there was a case reportedly that rose from about $5,969 to $10,665 in a single year. Now, I can give you an example, perfect one that's in my family. My sister, her husband's family purchased lakefront property at Flathead Lake in the early 1960s. They had a modest little cabin on it. And years later, my sister and brother-in-law bought adjoining property, built a very nice home, and they live there to this day. They've been there well over 30 years. And of course, the property's been in the family for 40, 50, 60 plus years. Her taxes went up in 2025 because of it, went up quite a little bit. And in 2026, because of the value of the property, her monthly her monthly tax bill is going to be $3,900 a month. So imagine that. Well, so that's why even supporters of reform sometimes say most people got a break, but the edge cases can be brutal, and that's a fact. So, what did lawmakers do? Well, they moved toward a tiered structure where the first portion of the value is taxed at a lower rate, and the next portion at a middle rate, and the highest portion at the highest rate. In plain English, a typical median value home benefits because of its value and it sits in the lower tier. And we can see that in some examples countywide. In Yellowstone County, where Billings is, the median home value is around $326,000, and estimates suggest a home around that value might pay about $1,324 under the new approach compared to $2,480 under the old laws. In some counties, the estimated decreases are dramatic. For example, places like Beaverhead, which is Dillon, Bighorn, they were cited as having large percentage decreases at their median values. Now, the big idea is relief where most people live. That's their primary residence, while shifting more load over to other categories. And here's the key line for this video. In 2026, the system shifts again, pushing even more of the residential tax burden towards second homes and short-term rentals, with the goal of providing more relief to primary homeowners and long-term rentals. So if you're a homeowner, that could be good news. If you're a second homeowner or a short-term rental operator, you may need to pay attention. And if you're in an area where your values have gone up dramatically, that's another issue entirely. Starting in 2026, residential property increasingly falls into two buckets. The first bucket is the primary residence and qualifying long-term rentals. These are the properties the reforms are trying to protect and stabilize. They can qualify for lower tiered rates, meaning your tax rate steps up as value rises. The second bucket is our second homes and short-term rentals or non-qualifying properties. Now, those properties can face a higher flat rate. And the framework we discussed earlier, that top rate can be 1.9%. Now we've got to talk about something that matters for renters and landlords. During the rush at the end of the 2025 session, a higher rate was mistakenly applied to some multifamily dwellings, apartment buildings, and larger projects. Now, why does this matter? Well, because when costs spike for multifamily buildings, landlords often try to recoup that through, of course, higher rents if the market allows it. And there are already warnings that renters could end up footing the bill for that mistake. The important note for 2026 is that this accidental rate issue is described as set to change in the next tax cycle under the updated structure, so some of that pressure could shift again. All right, pros and cons in the real world terms. Pros for many primary homeowners is that broad-based tax relief appears to be real in 2025. Early data suggests most residents got meaningful decreases. Two, you've got a tiering, it's more targeted. It aims to protect typical homes and put more burden on higher value portions and other categories. And three, 2026 is designed to push more of the burden off primary residences, and the policy direction is for more relief for homes people live in and long-term rentals. The cons, well, one, it's not everyone in a high value home is wealthy, like my sister. Fixed income homeowners can get crushed if they're in a hot market. Hers happens to be around Flathead Lake. Two, unrealized gain frustration. People are taxed on a value increase they didn't cash out on. And three, there's the complexity and change fatigue. So in 2025, we've got this change system. Then it's changing again in 2026. It's just really hard to plan for situations like that. And fourth, you've got potential rental impacts. Heirs or shifts in multifamily taxes can flow through to rent. So here's the practical checklist, whether you're buying, selling, or investing. One, know your category. Primary residence, long-term rental, second home, short-term rental. Two is plan for 2026 now. If you own a second home or run an STR, short-term rental, build a higher tax scenario into your numbers. Third, if you're a landlord, watch classification and policy updates, especially if you own multifamily or are deciding between long-term versus short-term strategy. Fourth is when buying in 2026, don't estimate taxes using old assumptions. Ask for realistic projections and confirm how the property is likely to be treated. And fifth, be cautious with certainty. Even people close to this process are warning, we don't know what 2026 will bring. In every specific case, you just don't know because implementation details and classifications really do matter. And I'm really hoping my sister gets some relief. So property taxes impact buying power and monthly payments, obviously. The investor cash flow is affected. Pricing strategy. You can imagine if, like, say, for example, up on Flathead Lake, you've got a number of legacy properties that get huge tax bills. Some of these people, like the one I mentioned earlier, that they may have to sell their property because they're getting priced out of it. If a lot of properties hit the market, that increases the inventory dramatically and could depress prices. Also, rent strategy can be a factor, and even which properties make sense as short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. In 2026, I expect buyers to ask the tax questions earlier, especially out-of-state buyers. considering vacation homes, or investors considering rental properties, and throwing all the information into spreadsheets. If you're buying, selling, or investing, and you want help thinking through the full picture, price, location, rental strategy, and how taxes might affect your long-term costs, reach out to Cyphers Family Real Estate. Again, all the information in order to get a hold of us is in the description below, and we invite you to give us a text, send us an email, or give us a call. We can't give tax advice, but we can help you ask the right questions, structure smarter offers, and connect you with the right professionals. If this video helped you, hey, be sure to like it, subscribe, and even share. We'd love to have a comment below. Tell us what you think. Are you a homeowner, a long-term rental owner, short-term rental operator, second home buyer or renter? Well, let us know. And if you want, I'll do a follow-up video on how to estimate your 2026 taxes without guessing. STR numbers, with the short-term rental numbers after the 2026 shift. What the multifamily change could mean for rent. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.